All right, and we're back. It is COMP397, summer 2016, week 9, part 2 of our broadcast, and we just finished off doing a label, which takes care of another issue. Let's see if we can get this this label done. Now I want to see if I can do this. It closes issue number. I got to say closes issue number and whatever the issue is, number 1, right? So we'll say something like added label object closes issue number 1, and then press commit and go push. Let's see if that works. And if I go back up online, and if I look at here, and if I look at my issues, still didn't do it. Did it fine when I was at home, but of course, can't do it now, right? What I really want to do is I want to say it's closed. So last commit closed this issue, close the comment. So that's done. So now we're a little bit further on our milestones, and you can see that issue number is done. And now we're going to keep working, right? So in order for me to do a state machine, I kind of need this scene abstract class, right? See this scene abstract class? I need this, and it's going to be an object because it's not going to be a a scene, and it's going to be an abstract class instead of a regular class. And we can do abstract classes in TypeScript. All they do is they prevent us from creating concrete objects, from abstract classes. That's all they do. It gives us more code hinting. That's all it's for. Okay. All right, let's try this out. So I'm going to go into VisualJS Code, and we're going to go to the top here. Now, in here, what I want to do is I want to create under scripts, I want to do a new folder. And under my new folder, I want to call this 2 things. I want to make a scenes folder, right? There's my scenes folder. I'm not going to add anything in there yet. I'm just prepping. And in my objects, I'm going to add a new file called scene.ts. So, my scene class is something that I want to add in. It's before I do my state machine. And again, I would have probably approached this a little differently at another time, okay? And the reason why is because, when we first started making this, it's almost like I want to make my game all in one object, and then from there, that's what I used to do it. And from there, what I used to do with my game being in one object, like in one file, then I split it off and made my scenes. That was good, but we have no time. So I'm gonna get you to say that I want you to think about encapsulating my scenes, as an example, in different files. So each scene is going to be like a level, right? Each scene is going to be a screen. Okay, that's what I want you to think about it, right? So again, module, I'm going to type this in. Module is going to be objects. Again, type it with me. It's good to practice. I know that it's just a lot of typing and we're slogging away, but it's good practice for that. Remember that I'm going to use the export keyword to create a class called scene with a capital S, right? That's our convention, which is going to extend a new object we haven't seen before so far called createjs.container, a container class. So interestingly enough, a container in createjs is just that, right? Actually, that's a great fix for your slot machines. Let me explain that for a second. If I make a container class, the container class will be added to the stage, but other things can be added to the container class. So example, think about my container as just a box, and if I want to add stuff like images, labels, or whatever, they're inside that container. And you might say, but why would you do that? And by the way, containers have overhead, right? And why would I want to do that? Because I can create a new container, and I can kill the old container. And if I kill the old container, all the objects go away, right? That's the good thing. So it's my solution to killing, clearing the screen, if you will. We still got to do some cleanup afterwards. But if I use the new keyword, I basically replace the stuff that's in that container class, with whatever I want. And I'm going to use a scene. I'm going to instantiate a new scene that's part of my game.ts file, but I'm going to have different scenes swap into that scene. I'm going to make an alias for that scene, and all I'm doing is I'm going to swap in the scene that I want, and I'm going to reinstantiate a new object of that scene. When I reinstantiate, I kill the old one. Okay, that's the way it's going to happen. So let's talk about this. So what I need to do is I need to use a constructor. And this time, the good thing is there is no nothing for the superclass. I need to send it to the superclass constructor, but the superclass constructor, if I look at it, takes no arguments, which is good. So it's just an empty container object. Think about it this way: if you're someone who likes to use Unity or another game system like that, it's an empty object, an empty game object, right? That's what it is. Okay, so that's one. And the next thing I want to create a couple of, well, first of all, I forgot to add a word up here. Export abstract class, right? Abstract class is important. It'll stop me from using the scene class itself to make generic scenes, right? I can extend my scene object. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. So in here, and this is what I want to do. I want to add game objects to the scene in a particular method. So here's what I want. I want to have a public start method. Right, there's my public start method. And it's going to return void, right? And all I'm going to use the start method for is to, I'm going to stage. Now here's something. I can't access the global stage object. How do I access the global stage object? I could go objects, right? Could go objects.core, but there's nothing there. Remember I talked about exploring the stage and making the stage available, right? This is why I would do it. And I told you to take it away, but there's a reason for it, because look, here's my export, right? And if I go back to here, I can't access objects core, right? It says property core does not exist, but it's not core, it's not objects core, it's core.stage. I'm exploring I'm using core.stage, right? .add child, right? Because it's part of my, I've exposed the stage, right? Core.stage.add child this. So what I'm saying is take this object, which is the scene, and add it to the stage automatically when I hit my start scene. That's what I'm doing. Okay. Now it's public. And here's the other one. I'm also going to make another one, a public update scene. So we're going to call it an update, capital U, which is a little different than what I did last time, which returns void. And this is where I update my game objects in my scene. I'm going to leave this empty for now. It's also kind of like a couple of abstract. So I'm just creating a structure for my scene. By the way, I could have used interfaces for this, the start interface and the iUpdate interface and stuff, and extended, my scene class by adding interfaces. But let's not go there right now. I don't want to confuse the crap out of you more than you are. But in the future, it's the proper thing to do. All right, so we've got this. One thing we're missing is a reference to the starts. So I want to start this start scene right away. So as soon as I instantiate my scene, I want to start my start scene, which means add the scene to the stage. As soon as I make my menu scene. Okay? It's important to do this because it'll save us trouble later on. Okay, let's do the class documentation. So I want to do an export, an abstract class, which is a scene, which extends my CreateJS container, and I'll say this abstract scene class is used to create individual scenes. And we'll talk about that in a second. Also, in my public start, I can do this, right? Now it returns, if it doesn't give it to you, you can always, and sometimes it doesn't because it's just a program, right? I can say @method, right? Which is start, right? And it's public, and I can say @returns void, right? That's what that is, @returns void. And I can give it a description up here which says add game objects to my scene in this method. That's what I'm really doing. So I add game objects to my scene. So this is where I would add my game objects. Like for example, I would add in something like, if I had a player or if I had whatever, I would do it in my start scene. Because remember, when my start scene, after my start scene is done, right, it's going to add the whole container, right, to the stage. The stage is the base display object. my container, I can make as many container objects that contain other objects. It's almost like a parent object that I add other objects to that get attached to the stage. That's what I'm doing. Okay? And in my update, let's do this update method. I'm going to use this thing too, right? My update method, again, I can go at method. Oops, if I do it properly. And we're going to call this update, and we'll say at returns void. We're just using the UEDoc specification for this, right? And then some, what does it do? It updates game objects in my scene. That's what I'm going to do. So updates game objects in the scene. And maybe instead of my scene, I'll say the scene. It's not my scene anymore, it's your scene too. Right? Okay, cool. So there's my abstract class. My scene class is done, but I need to add it in like we did before. So the first part is this, yes? On your core. So you can't access your core? Core, stage, agile? Well, what you can do to fix that is up here, you can do one of these. If you really want to, you can do a triple / this is what fixes it. And then you can do something like this. Reference path, this is the dependency, right? Is equal to, you can put in there what the stage is. Now remember, we're inside my object, so I got to go up one, right? And then down into a core, right? And then down into game.ts, right? So you can do this, and it doesn't create a cyclic reference, but it gives you more information about core. Remember that I created, if you missed this, in my game.ts, I created a namespace called core that I surrounded everything with, right? That's why it's an encapsulation. If you want to see what this looks like in regular JavaScript, it looks like this, right? It gives you what this is called is a immediately invoked function expression, an IFI. This IFI encapsulates everything so that way it doesn't allow your variables to be out of scope. Only the ones you want to show are exposed. For example, I have exposed my stage, right? And the way it exposes the stage is it returns it, right? So it allows you to return the stage object back to your console. And this is what I've done. I've used export let stage, and what this does is it exposes the stage object so that I can see it. Remember that I only want to expose the bare minimum stuff. The more I expose, the more exposed I am, right? Like literally, it's like I'm naked, right? And they can do stuff with my code, shut me down or whatever, right? All right. So I've added my scene. What I want to do is I want to modify my index.html now. That's the next piece, next step, right? So part one is I built my scene object in my objects folder. Part two is I went to my index.html and I want to add my scene. But guess what? My button and my label probably would have to be before my scene because I'm probably going to get buttons and labels to be added to my scene. So therefore, my scene needs to know about them, my scene superclass. So therefore, I might as well put it after my buttons and labels. So I'm going to kind of copy this. And in here, I'm going to put that in there. And it really doesn't make any difference, but I want to really put something like this scene in there. So this is my scene. It's attached now into my game, right? Without this, I can put as much reference as I want. If you don't have this inside your index.html template, that might be the other issue. You'll never connect. It'll always error out. Okay. Okay, this is part two. Part three, inside my core, I have a reference.ts folder, and I want to add that in as well. So I'm going to copy the reference path. And then what I want to do is on other objects, I want to add in scene. So my scene is now linked in to my objects. Okay, cool. I've saved everything. Oops. I've saved everything. I've transpiled. I'm transpiling automatically. Notice I have all these changes. Reference.ts, my scene.ts, and my index.html, right? And now this is going to take care of issue number. Let's take a look. And this is where you can look online. My scene class is abstract class is on number 4, right? So I wonder if I've got issue number. There's a format to put in with my commits. Let's try it. You know what? This time let's try it on my command line. So I'll stop this for a second and clear this up, and I'll do it on my command line to show what it looks like. It'll say git And all these changes, right? Git add dot, first step. Git commit minus M, and we'll say this added abstract scene class, right? Which closes issue number 4. Is that what it is? I think it's number 4. Let's take a look. Hit number 4. There it is. And then I'm going to go git push. This is the thing. Do I push origin to master? Or do I push to? What's my branch? So if I go to git branch, just to make sure I'm still on point 1, right? So I can't push to master. I got to push to point 1. So do I do, just curious, on the command line, do I do git push origin, right, to 0.1? Is that what I do? Yeah. Right. So what I'm thinking is 0.1 local, pushing to 0.1 remote, right, which pushes to that branch. And if I go back up to here and refresh, right, then of course it doesn't take care of it, but we'll figure it out. It's just that wording thing, I'm sure. So in here, inside my my thing, it says last commit took care of this issue, and then closing comment. So I took care of that, and I can see that I have issues I have 6 issues now, and if I look at milestones, I'm 33% complete. Yeah, sure. So my command line thing is, if I look at it, it's git push origin 0.1. But I did that after I did git add dot and git commit minus M for message, and then whatever the message is. Okay, now that I've got this piece, we need to work on the next one. And see what I'm doing is I'm working on it gradually. I'm kind of hitting each one of these issues one at a time until they're all done. And then I'm finished 0.1, all right? Now, we're going to work on this all day, working on it all day, whatever's required, right? Okay, so what's the next issue? Let's go back to issues. So I've got add a working state machine. Okay, I need a menu scene, I need a gameplay scene, a game over scene. These are all the scenes I need. I can prepare for it by doing all these first, right? A preloader, I can probably do that one now as well, because that's not going to affect anything. I'm trying to look at, I'm kind of, you know what I'm trying to look at, right? Low-hanging fruit, stuff I can hit right away, where I don't have to do a lot of other dependencies before I do that one, right? Need to create an asset object in an object's namespace. Okay, fine, I can do that too. But these are the things I need to do. Let's go back and add in a preloader and see what it looks like. Okay, remember we've added in our preload JS, right? So if I go back to, we'll take care of that one now. That's all in the game.ts file. So here's my game.ts file. And right now what's happening is when upon load, when my Windows loads, here's this one, right? So my Windows loads, window.add event listener. On the load event of my window, by the way, there's 3 objects that we're dealing with with HTML, right? We're dealing with the document object, which is your HTML document. We're dealing with the window object, which is the what? What's the window object represent? Who knows JavaScript? Window object. What's the window object? Come on. It's the browser. Then there's the screen object, which is your viewport, right? So if you're trying to do responsive design, you look at the screen object's viewport resolution, and then you can respond to it if you really want to go there. But the width of the browser window is also actually relative, right? Because the browser would take up the whole viewport anyway, right? Chances are, especially in a mobile device. So therefore, you can look at the window object. The window object gives us the size of the screen, but it also gives us this load event. When the window is finished loading, which means the browser is finished loading the page, then what we're doing is kick off this init callback function, right? Now you can write this inline if I really want to, but that means that I would have to take this whole function and write it as an anonymous function inline underneath the window.add event listener, which doesn't make, I don't like it. So I'm just using a name function, which is init, and I'm pointing this as the callback. The callback is now the init function. That's what's happening, right? And if you notice, this is the form. It says window add event listener type load listener. I have an event, and I can also, the option is if I'm using capture or not. I can put in a true or false or whatever I want in there. For now, I'm going to leave it as is, which is false by default. All right, so my init function is happening after I load, but that doesn't make any sense. I want my init function to load after my preloader loads my stuff, right? I want a preloader, my preload.js, to load up all my images and assets, and then I want to start loading my stuff, my scene and everything else. This is a really good idea because if I load things the way I'm doing it, hard coding it like this, right? This is bad. That means I'm doing a file access. I'm going to the system and doing system access over and over again, which is gonna, in the beginning, really slow down my game. I don't want that, especially at different places. If I kept on doing this over and over again, I would just keep on doing file access. Whereas if I do a preloader, I preload all my assets up first, and then I use them all. That's a better way. So you might have a loading screen, which you see in a lot of games these days. I load, 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 load. When I'm done loading, I'm ready to go, right? And that's what I'm gonna do. Yes? No. Did I talk about preloader before now? Okay. You'll get bonus marks if you use a preloader. All right. And you better put it in there. Say, Tom, I use a preloader. Give me bonus marks. So how do I do that? My recommendation is you write the preload just in order. You don't have to do this because remember, JavaScript will know where to look. But I'm going to put the preload function right here. So we'll call this preload. Okay, here's my preload function. And there's a couple things I need to put in here. In order for my preload functions to work properly, I need to use something called, I want to create my assets as a variable, right? And I want to declare that as a functional variable. When I say functional scope from now on, it means inside my namespace core, right? So functional scope, or in my namespace scope. So everything in my namespace here just has a let. I'm not going to expose the assets yet, although I could. Right? I could, and I may have to, but I'm not going to expose it yet. Right now, I'm going to leave it closed, and my assets, from a control perspective, is going to be a variable that I'm going to declare underneath my, above my stage, because my stage and my canvas would have to know about it. So it's one of my first objects. Now, it doesn't really matter the order. I could put it wherever, right? But I like putting it in the order that I would load it in. So chances are I'll probably put it underneath my variable declarations up here. So I'm going to say let. We'll say assets, we'll call it assets, is equal to something called a createjs.loadQ. Now, for those people who want to know where I'm getting this, again, there's a bit of a rush going on, trying to get all this in so that I can get all the features going. Then I refer you back to the documentation, right? Under preload.js, if I go preload.js, there's a great example of what I'm going to do right now. Okay, so if I go to preload.js, under documentation, and if I look here, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm creating something called a load queue, right? And then I'm loading up my assets. And the way you can load your assets up is with something called a manifest, right? So I'm creating a manifest of all the assets that I'm going to load in what looks like JSON data. And by the way, you can use a JSON loader for that if you really want to be exciting, right? I'm not going to, right? But if you really want to, you could. I'm going to have my JSON assets data, if you will, inside of its own little array, and it's going to be an array of objects. Okay, let's check this out. How does this work? So the first thing is I declare my load queue, right? And this is really my asset object itself. So this is, declare a reference to the preloader. That's what this is. The load queue is really just part of the preloader, right? Okay, cool. Part two, I need to kind of create a bunch of assets, like a manifest, if you will. I'm going to call it asset data for now, okay? So, again, you can call it whatever you like. It should pretty much come around the same place where you declare all your variables. Again, it should have, namespace scope. So something like let asset data, right? Now, here's something that I don't have. I could make it equal to an array, right? This is the JavaScript way of making an array. But what kind of array is this? If I hover over, it's an array of any, right? Remember, I want my stuff to be strongly typed, right? So in order for me to make my stuff strongly typed, oh man, I need some kind of asset class to define what my assets will look like. Let me explain that to you. So if I go here, what I really want is, I want to define my assets in here, right? Inside this little array. and they're going to be an array of objects. The array are going to have a couple of properties. So here's my one property is called ID. The ID is going to be a friendly name that I'm going to use for my asset. For example, my start button. Right? My start button should really be as close to what it looks like in the assets folder as possible. For example, my start button in my assets folder in this iteration of my code in this particular semester has a lowercase s. Chances are I might as well make it an old lowercase s so I remember. Start button. So that's the name of my object. Next is my source. And this is the source of the source path, if you will. This is the source of the path of the string path. Well, I have it over here, right? It's right down here. So I'll just take this, copy it, and move it up here. Right, that's the source path. So that's my first asset, and that's really it. I've got my asset. Now, if I hover over this, I get a little bit of reference. I have an object that's an ID of string and a source that's a string. So I could create a really better than this is to create a little interface. We're going to talk about this a little later. But remember, if you want to create just a couple of properties and you want to give some strong typing for what you're doing, you can create an interface and you can create your asset data as a data type. You're creating a little data type, custom data type that has an ID and a source. For now, let's leave it as is, beautiful JavaScript the way it is, and move on, right? So this is like my asset manifest for images and sounds. So this is, okay? All right, so now that I got my asset manifest, I want to build up my preloader. So I want to say something like this. I'm going to say assets, right, is equal to a new create.js dot load queue, because load queue, right? Because this is what this is. First, I declare the shape, a reference to my preloader. It's just the shape of the class that I'm using. I haven't really declared them yet. I declare my variables first, and then inside my methods, I'm going to instantiate them. Right? That's what this does. So it instantiates the loader. So this is. And then and sometimes you might see it as called loader. Then I'm going to say something like assets.install plugin. And then what I want to pass in is something called a reference to create.js.sound. And here, my friends, is where we have to be really creative, right? And I've done this in other videos. Have you seen it? I'm getting an error, right? But if you look at the documentation, right? Here's the documentation. Notice that following the documentation. Exactly, right? This is what it says to do. So there's two possibilities. One, the documentation is wrong. Do you think the documentation is wrong? No. What could be possibly wrong? By the way, this is an issue that I brought to CreateJS before. I opened up an issue with that. Truly. They haven't taken care of it yet. Well, what do you think the problem is? My type definition library is wrong. That's the reality. My type definition is file made by people. People make mistakes. And one of the things that they've kind of come up with is either it's been deprecated to put it in this way. That's one of the ways, one of the reasons. Or if I hover over it, says type of sound provides no match for the signature, blah, 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 any. Well, where does this come from? Well, it comes into my typings. If I look at typings under globals, under preload.js, right? And if I go to my index.d.ts, right? You can see that this is the type definition library for my object, right? And what I want to do is I want to find the reference to where I have my error. My error is under install plugin, right? So I'll go here, and I want to search for Control F or Command F on the Mac. So if I go plugin, right, here's my install plugin. And what is it returning? It's not returning any. It's returning an object. That's what this is. A function. Plugin is actually a callback function that returns any. That's not the case here. I'm using a create.js object. It's not a function, right? So what I really want to say is my plugin is, I hate to say this because when I say any, you know what I'm doing to TypeScript, right? I'm doing this. TypeScript, I'm flipping the bird to TypeScript saying, TypeScript, I don't care about you. I don't want your type definitions. That's what I'm doing. I'm flipping the bird to TypeScript here. I don't want to do that, but this is what would solve the problem. If I did this and save, right? Now remember, this is a change that I'm making locally, right? And if I go back up to here, in my type definitions, I'm saving it. And I'm going back out to my game.ts, and my problem is gone. This Doesn't mean that. By the way, please don't solve problems this way. If you get like a red line, it means that there's a problem, right? That's why we use TypeScript. This is a problem. We're taking it away because it's not a problem with me or with you. It's a problem with the type definition. I don't know what they want for this particular one. We can kind of look at the documentation later on, but it's not very clear as to what create.js.sound. It should be an object, and create.js.sound, if I hover over it, the type definition for this is a sound, the class create.js.sound. That's not a return, a function that returns any. That is an object, totally different. That's why I made it any. I could have said object, but then be careful, that might mess you up too later on. So I'm not going to try and interpret what they want in their library, so I'd make it any. Yeah.
Instead of any, can we make it create.js.sound?
I would be very careful. Try it. See what it gives you. It might give you an error, right? I'm not going to say no, but just be careful what it says, because it's not just sound, because this is an install plugin. It can be anything. You can install a plugin. Other plugins too, right? That's why you can't just specify what it is, right? It's got to be generic. All right, next one is assets.on, all right? When I go on means, on is a shortcut for add event listener for create.js only, right? On, so when my assets complete, when it completes loading, then what do I want to do? I want to run init. That's what I want to do. And I want to pass in a reference to this. I want to run init after my preloader, which means down here, right, where it says init, no. This should go to preload. Now, so preload on when my window finishes loading, it loads my preloader, I load my assets, and when my assets are finished loading, then I hit my init. That's what happens, right? Otherwise, they won't be loaded before I load everything up. Okay, so this is my asset data. Here's my incomplete. It loads init, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to take my loader and I want to say assets load manifest, an actual method, and I want to pass in my asset data. Remember, this happens asynchronously. So when I create this event, this is an event handler or event listener that listens for complete events. But it happens asynchronously, so I could have done this before or after, it doesn't matter. Once I declare this on, it says I want to bind an event listener on my object assets. So when my assets finishes loading, then it does something. That's what this does. Okay, so this is my preload function. Let's document it a little bit. So again, at method, we'll call it a method, preload. And what does it do? It returns void. I forgot that. Let's put void at the end here. So at returns, I can spell method too, that would be good. Void. And what does it do? This method preloads assets for the game. Cool. So that's what it does, preloads everything. We need to test this, and the way you use this is, and this is another, we have to change one more thing here. The only way to test this out is to use the preloaded data when I pass in my stuff, right? So example, when I set up my button or whatever I'm setting up, right, I need to pass in the raw data. So if I look at the example online, let me show you. So the way I would use this thing is once I've created my asset, for example, my image, I would say whatever the asset is dot get result my image, and I'm passing that into my bitmap. So that, I'm using that as my bitmap. So that means it's not just an asset string, but rather I'm passing my string, so it's a friendly name for my asset string, whatever it is, my asset path, but it's not a string path anymore. It's just the name of my asset name, or whatever, right? So let's go back. We have to change up my button for a second because it's named wrong. So I got to make change to my button. Let's go back. So I go back to this is where we can test it. So I go to my button. And if you notice, my button does a couple things. It takes in the constructor, it takes in something called path string. Well, that's not really a path string anymore. It's the image string, right? So I need to rename this thing. So in here, I'm going to rename. So I'm going to go to rename symbol. I'm going to call this image string. Notice that now it passes the image string to here, but that's not really what happens. In my superclass, which is passing in a bitmap, right? What I'm really doing is I'm passing in my assets.getResult. Oop, assets. Oh, that means I have to make assets available which is I have to expose my assets in the core method, or in my core namespace, or else I won't be able to see it here, right? So go back to my namespace first. And in my assets, which is up here, and again, there's many ways to do this. For now, we'll expose it. Later on, we'll close it. We'll find a way of doing it. I'm going to export my assets in my core namespace so I can see it. So core and stage so far are the two things, assets and stage. Whew, let's go back. So I'm going to go back to my button. And inside here, what I want to say, inside my superclass, I want to do something like this. Let's just wipe this out for now so I can put it back. I want to say assets, can't be assets, core.assets, right, dot get result. And I'm going to pass in my get result the name of my asset, which is my image string. Okay. Now you might say, whoa, what the hell is that, right? Well, I need to use the get result method of my preloader to send a blob to my image into my superclass. That's what it takes, right? Whereas all I need right now is my image string. My image string is just the name of my asset. So it's going to be, instead of the full path, it's going to be start button. Okay? So then, if this is true, then I got to go back to my game.ts. And inside here, this is my asset. But here, I'm going to have an error, right? Because I'm not passing this into my asset. I'm passing my friendly name, start button. I only need this part. Because that's what I named it in my manifest, right? So my button is going to be the start button. That's what I'm saying. My start button is going to be passed in. It's going to have a friendly name of start button because in my asset data, we're defining start button as the ID that's referring to this source. Okay, that's how it works. Whew, saved. We need to test this one. We haven't tested the other ones because we just put them together, and we haven't tested those classes. We may have to reopen an issue if we have a problem with the scene class or whatever. I'm pretty sure we don't, but let's take a look, right? Okay. Let's run light server for this one. Test and start. So let's refresh to make sure it's there. Start. And if I go inspect, I can see that in my console, I have no error. And in my sources, I can see what's there. Let me take a look and see if my index.html has my my scene. It does have my scene. It has my label. It has my button. And in my scripts, under my core, under game.ts, right, then I should have a preloader, which is right here. This is my preloader that loads everything up. Are you getting an error still? Could be. We'll have to fix that too. All right, so so here it is. Now you know what I haven't done, right? Remember, did we deploy this to Azure last time? I think we did. I think we did do it. And I believe it was COMP397. See, I got this other one. Summer 2016. Right? Dash lesson 8. There it is. AzureWebsites.net. Let's see what I got here. Remember, it takes a few beats to get it. Let me just refresh. And I got that on Azure too. Check out on Azure. See if you get it. If you get the Azure stuff. Because if it works for me, it should work for you. We're using the same code base. Right? Just refresh when you get up there. And so if I click on there, I still get clicked. I still get this whole functionality, right? All I'm doing is I'm just enhancing and adding features. I'm adding my preloader in place. And the preloader is taking care of some of my problems. Whew. Okay, now that I've got that, I've tested it locally, I've tested it remotely, I'm good to make that commit. All right, so I'm going to go back to my commit, stop this, and I'm going to say git. First of all, I'm going to say git status, so you can see it. You can see all these things have changed, right? I'm doing it on the command line this time instead of in the tool. Git add dot, which means add everything to the staging area, right? Git commit -m, and in my my message, I'm going to say added preloader to game.ts, and then I'll say this closes issue number Sorry, guys. I don't know what the issue is for that one, which is the preloader, issue number 8. Okay, so it's issue number 8. Eventually, I get the right code. And then close this off, and then git push origin 0.1. I'm going to push it up to the master branch, or up to GitHub, and it refreshes. I'm going to go here, and I'll figure this out later on, because I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to say something like last commit closed this issue for now, and click close and comment. Yay. All right, and we're plotting along slowly this time, but you can see that I'm about 44% done. Right? I know it's not exciting to everybody. For me, it's exciting. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can see your progress, right? It's on my report card. If I get this all done tonight, I don't know if I'll be able to get it all done tonight, but if I can get it all done tonight, at least the boilerplate, I'm happy. You know, it's one of the things I want to get done, and I'm doing it like, you know, in order, step by step, so you can see it. All right, let's take a look at my issues. You can see that I have 5 open issues here. By the way, if someone wants to help me to get this done, and they have other versions of my code, hint, hint, do a pull request. Do a pull request. People that are out there, this is the time to do it. How do you do a pull request? You have your own commit that you're going to do, something different than that I'm working on, and then what you do is when you're working on that other part, when I submit a pull request, I can go to pull requests. This is how you do it. Pull request. You have to have a separate branch going on, right? I can create a new pull request. And what this does is it compares 0.1 with master. I can't do it right now because I'm in my branch and I'm using 0.1, right? So base is master. I'm going to compare it to 0.1, right? And what I can do is I can see the differences. These are all the things I've added in, but to my master. Later on, I'm going to merge all these changes to my master, and then 0.1 will be no more anymore. It'll just be my master branch again. Okay. Right now, I'm just working on 0.1, but my master branch, if you look back, hasn't changed. Hasn't changed at all. If I go back to this, and if I go back to my master, you can see that under scripts, under objects, I don't have a scene class or a label class. However, if I go to my 0.1, I have all this stuff that I've worked on, right? Is my 0.1 branch affecting my master? Absolutely not. My master branch is not being affected whatsoever. I'm still testing the features I want to add in for my 0.1 release. That's what I'm doing, okay? I know, lots of detail, and you might say, Tom, we don't need this stuff, we just want to code. Sure, go ahead, right? I just find it much easier to keep track of stuff like this. If we work together slowly, you might enhance your understanding of stuff too. Let's kill this stuff. And this one too. All right, so we talked about these 2 APIs. Please always look at the API documentation when you have a question. You can see good examples here of, that's why I'm using CreateJS and I'm not using Phaser. CreateJS has tons and tons of API documentation, like really thorough, and it's really simple. It's not that complex, and it's compartmentalized, it's component-based. You don't have to use everything. Like in Phaser, you have to, it's all one model, right? So it's very opinionated. Here, it's not very opinionated. Just use the module separately, and you're good to go. Okay, let's continue without too much talk, because the more I talk, Tom, the less I get done, Tom. All right. So what I want to do here is I want to create this idea of a state machine, but I'm going to use stubs to get this done. So I'm going to work on the state machine. If someone wants to work on these other 2 scenes, the menu scene or the start or the game over scene or one of those, you can certainly do that. I'm going to work on the state machine right now. Okay, so let's see if someone takes the bait, tries to do it. Probably not. Okay. Anyway, so here's this class, right? This core namespace, and one of the things that I want to do here is I want to create a scene, and I want to kind of be clear about this, because one of the things we can do with a scene is, you know, we want to basically make it a number. All right, I want to make it a number, scene number. Why? Because I want to create a configuration file, which I don't have right now. Almost like an enum. How do I make an enum? Anyone remember how to do that? Oh yeah, you guys are good with all that stuff, all the technology, right? But for now, what I want to make it to look like is I could create another area inside my folders, right, called config, right? my config will have configuration objects that are built in there in my config namespace to do things like, as an example, configure my screen, or set some constants in my code. And there'll be utility functions that I want to use. I don't have to make classes and namespaces, just like I haven't done it here. My namespace doesn't have classes in here. They just have variables and functions. And I can expose whatever I want with the export keyword. Okay, let's make that. This is something new, and I haven't categorized it. That means I probably should put it as an issue, right? Something I just thought of, right? And it's a feature that I want to add in. It's not an enhancement. So I'm going to go back to my GitHub, and go to my issues, and I'm going to add in another one, right? Because I didn't figure this out. I'm going to say add config module. That's what I want to do to contain constants for the game. The game. Submit new issue. I want to make this as a feature. I'm going to add this as on the milestone 0.1 and submit new issue. Yay. It kind of lowers my completion, but hey, you know how it is, right? We have to all be reasonable people here. So if I go back to my issues, I got 6 issues now. My milestones, I'm back down to 40%, right? And that's how it's going to go. You know, you're going to kind of work on it, and then someone's going to think of an issue or whatever, and it's going to change some of these problems. So I got 6 open, 4 closed. Let's keep going. All right, let's close this issue. How do I do that? Well, what I want to do is, again, I'm going to create a new folder. I've created a scenes folder. I haven't used it yet. I want to create a new folder here called config, my config folder. And inside my config folder, I want to put in, you know, the stuff that I'm going to, what am I configuring? What am I going to do? What am I adding to the config, right? It's constants for things like my scenes, right? So really, it's my scene config, right? I can add different things to my config namespace, right? And I can break it down with classes or just functions, right? Let's try this out so I can show you what I'm talking about here. So here's my new file. I'm going to call this the scene config. So scene.ts. We're going to have the same name because it's in a different namespace, so it's okay, right? So my scene config, it's a new module I call config, right? And inside my config, I'm going to export a new class, right? Here's my new class called scene. Follow me here. It's not the scene class from my objects. It's the scene class in my config scene. So it's going to look like this: config.scene. And whatever the thing is going to be, right? So inside my scene, right, my class, I only have some stuff that I want to share, right? And one of them is a constant, right? So now should it be public static? Because I never want to instantiate my scene object. I just want a public static object, right? Called, for example, menu, right? And menu is going to be a type number. This is the simplest way to do it, like an enum, right? You can do an enum as well. And then we're going to set it to 1 or 0, whatever you want, right? And then public static, the next one is going to be my play scene. And the number for this one is going to be 1. And public static, follow me here, my over scene, my game over scene, let's make it one word, over, is equal to 2. So they're just numbers. They're arbitrary numbers. Again, think about this as an enum. And I'm putting them inside of a couple closures here for a reason, right? So it's going to look like this. Go to config, go to scene, go to .menu. That's what it's going to be. And that menu is going to have a value of 0. So it's going to give an enumeration. This is the old way we used to do enumerations in TypeScript. And I don't want to confuse you, and this is nice and easy for you to understand. That's why I'm using it. Okay, so here's my config. I'm making a module, right? I could do some documentation. I'll leave the documentation to later just to save some time, and I'll just do this for you guys, right? So I want to go into my index.html. Here's my index.html, and add that config. And I want to add it before everything, because I think it's important that my config stuff is added in at the top, right? So I'm going to kind of copy this and go here and paste. And in here, instead of scripts objects, it's going to be scripts config, and under my my button, it's going to be scene. There's my scene.js, so I've added that in there. And then what I need to do is take this path and go into under my game objects. So if I go to core, references, before everything else, it's going to be a new reference path. I'm just telling the compiler where to look, because that's what I'm doing. Dot, and then I'm going to say config, right? And then scene.ts, and then like this, right? So what that does, it adds the config namespace into my class, right? So then when I go over here into my game, which is in my core, I can do something like, I'm not going to do this right now, but I can do something like config. If I can type config dot scene dot, and then I have a couple of options, right? Play. I can do that, right? So play will be the one I want. Okay, now here's a problem too. I'm using my scene.play. What's the difference between, look at the other stuff I got. Scene, I only want a few things. I got all this other stuff. How do I get rid of all this other stuff and just have play, over, and menu, right? How do I do that? Well, it's the way I declare it. This is why I'm testing this right now, so I can show you. If I go back to my config, and I go back to my scene.ts, I'm making these public static. That's good, but I'm exporting the whole class. So what I could do, if you really want to be a stickler, which, hey, let's face it, I want to be a stickler, right? I could export each one. But if I export them, then notice there's an error, because static makes it exportable. Do I have to even use the export keyword? That's interesting. If they're public static, that means I never have to instantiate my scene class in order for those to be kind of exposed. So how does it work here? Can I do a config dot? Well, no, because if I don't export my scene, I don't see it. See? I don't see my scene class. I can't see it unless I export it. And if I go back. So I need to export this, right? But these are static. Do I have to make them static? Yeah, because they're inside of a class. Otherwise, it will never be instantiated, so therefore it won't be accessible, right? So just saying, we have to work at these issues. We may have to enhance or do a bug fix later on for this one. Okay, let's go back. So we know that we can access those things, and I want to declare at the top of my file. So again, I'm declaring a bunch of variables here in my variable declarations. One of the ones I want to do is there's two objects I want. I want something called the current scene, right? Current scene, and I also want the scene itself, a scene that I want to play with. Okay, watch me what I'm doing here. Okay. So here in underneath my before my asset manifest, or is it after? It's way before my asset manifest and before my scenes up here, right? I'm going to go do something like this. I'm going to kind of declare scene variables, right? And one of them is going to be let current scene, that's my current scene that I'm running right now, is of type objects scene. Now, remember, I can do this. I'm not instantiating. I'm just saying that all my scenes are of the scene type. If I have a play scene, the play scene is going to extend my scene class. So therefore, it's still part of the scene type. So this is okay, right? And then the next one would be var, or let, I should say, scene, right, is equal to a number, right? Because the number is going to be 0, 1, 2, whatever it's going to be. And I want it to be a number so that it gives me typing. In the future, we would make this equal to an enum, enumeration, right? Whatever the enumeration type is going to be. For now, we'll leave it like this. Okay, cool. So we've got those two things. And I've got my init function. And what I want to do is I've got my main game loop, right? Well, what I want to do is inside my init, so after I preload, I go to my init, but instead of going to main right away, I don't want to go to main right now. Right, here's my main. I want to change main, by the way, to something else. It's not going to be called main anymore, because main is just a test that we've been using for now. So this, for now, let's just get rid of it, right? Because main is gone. There is no more main, right? What we're going to have instead is something else. But what I want to do is something like this. I want to say my scene, my default scene is my menu scene, okay? So let's just put that in here. So in my init, so we're going to set up the default scene. Okay, and we're going to say something like this. So scene, lowercase, is equal to config, right, dot scene, dot scene, dot menu. And that's what it is. Now it says, oh. Okay, and how come this is giving me an issue? It says property menu does not exist on type of scene. No. What was that? Huh? Did I make capital letters before? Thank you. Trying to do this all at once, right? So that's the one thing. And then the next thing is I want to set my current scene, and this is where it gets a little hairy. So that's my scene that I want. And then I want to call something called change scene. I don't have that right now, that function, right? But the change scene function is going to say this: whenever I call change scene, I have to do two things: set my scene that I want, and then call my change scene method. That's what I'm going to do. Again, we can trip this to make it a little bit more efficient later on, okay? But down in here is I want to make a new function called change scene, right? And my change scene function is going to be where my state machine lives. Okay? So how does this change scene look? Well, first of all, it returns void. Right? So it's not going to. I'm not going to return it. There's no return type for this one. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to again launch various scenes. Right? This is what this is going to do here. And in my various scenes I'm going to launch, I'm going to use a switch statement for that. So I'm going to say switch whatever the scene is that I've set up. So whatever the scene is, I'm going to create a switch statement. And I'm going to say something like this: case config, my scene is config dot scene, right? My scene class dot menu, then do something, right? Or if case config dot scene, again dot play, then do something else. And case, this is the basics for the state machine. Case config dot scene dot over, then do something else. Those are going to be my scenes. This is my scene switcher, if you will. It's going to switch from one scene to the other depending on what the value of my scene object is going to be. Okay, we're going to think about this for a second. So this one is going to, just for some documentation, so show the menu scene. Down here, this is going to show the play scene, whatever the play scene is the first level, right? And this down here is going to show the game over scene. I could have called it game over, but just making it easier. All right, so if that's true, what I want to do is I want to do a couple of things here, and let's start with the menu scene. One thing I always want to do is I want to go to the stage, and I want to remove all children. Why? What does remove all children do? Remember that the stage itself is a display object. It's an array of stuff I want to display, an array. When I remove all children, I pop everything off the array. So the array is empty. What this does is it cleans up my stage right away, right? Well, the only thing that's going to be on my stage is going to be the scene object, my scene container. So my scene container is automatically going to be removed from the stage. That's number one, okay? So these are cleanup values. Then I want to go to the next step, and I want to say something like this. Here's my menu. Again, I want to think about how I'm going to instantiate my menu. I don't have a menu scenes yet, but it's going to look something like this. I'm going to do something like this. Menu, then I'm going to make a new object is equal to a new. And again, I'm in my scenes class. It's going to be something like this. Scenes. I don't have it yet. Scenes dot menu. Right. I'm going to instantiate a new menu scene. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, and then that really what it's going to do is going to start the menu scene. So all of them are going to look just like this. In fact, every time I go to any one of these things, it's going to remove all children, and it's going to instantiate my scene. So let's put that in place so you can see it. So again, depending on what it is, I'm going to stage.remove all children. Well, if that's the case, regardless of what I do, couldn't I put remove all children somewhere else, like up here? As soon as I enter the change scene, I'm going to remove all children, right? for now, we'll think about refactoring later on. For now, let's leave it as is, right? But I could do that, right? And again, inside here, I'm going to instantiate my play scene. So play is equal to a new scenes. I don't have this dot play. I don't have the play scene. I'm hoping one of you guys are going to put it together, right, to help me out. And then again, I'm going to stage dot. Probably no one's going to do it. Remove all children, right? And of course, the over scene is equal to a new scenes dot over. There's no code hinting, so I'm just typing by hand. Okay, there we go. So that's really the state machine. The state machine, what it says is, I'm going to switch states or scenes. I'm going to move from one scene to the other. That's all I'm doing. I'm moving from my start screen, my menu scene, and when I'm done, I'm going to move into my play scene. When I'm done, I'm going to go back to my menu scene, or I'm going to go to my over scene, depending on what happens, right? And I need to do that if I can't make a game without that kind of stuff, right? And especially if I ask you in your final project to make a game that has 3 levels, you need this. So I need to do it now with you, get you used to the whole syntax, so that when you get your information, you have everything you need. By the way, you could have done the same thing with your slot machine, right? Your state machine and all that. But if you didn't, it's okay. Okay, so this is this. We're not quite done. We can't test this. This is one of those when you can't test unless you actually have one scene, right? So we have to kind of do kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? And we only have 10 minutes left approximately to finish this off, so I don't keep you guys all here, but let's try this out. So just to go over some of the things we need to do that we haven't taken care of. One of the things is that in my stage, right? So in my my game, so let's take a look at it. So I declare all these variables. Again, it's all messy because of all my comments, right? But then I go into my preloader, and from my preloader, I go to my init function. From my init function, I go to my game loop. And here's where I update my stage. But I don't want just to update my stage. I also want to call the update method of my particular scene, whatever the scene is, right? Okay. That means that what I want to do is I want to do current scene.update, right? So let's go to current scene.update. Now, how can I know to do this? I don't even have a current scene yet. How do I need to do a current scene.update? And it says property update does not exist in type scene. Doesn't it? Well, no, it's capital U, right? Current scene.update, right? So current scene.update is what I'm going to be doing. And what it does, it calls the scenes update method, right? So here's a call scenes update method. And that scene is going to change. I can't put in a specific scene in there because that scene may not be active. My active scene or my active state is going to change. The original one is going to be menu, right? Then I'm going to make it something else. It's going to be the play. So if I put in those things in here, it's going to error out every time. One of those 3 things is going to error. It's going to give me an error, right? My switcher is down here, right? So it's going to tell me what the scene is, right? So my menu is of this type or whatever. That's what it's going to say. Where do I, the other thing that I missed inside here is I got to tell what my current scene is. So my current scene, something that I don't have yet as well, right? Because I can't do this. My current scene is going to be equal to menu. Now this is interesting syntax, right? I can't do this yet, but because I don't have any current scenes. Is equal to play, right? And my current scene is equal to over. Okay, why? Because what I'm saying is I'm using my current scene as a pointer, right? That's what I'm doing. Or a reference is the better way to say it in non-C++ language, right? Sorry, gotta shake my head there. Because it's a type of scene, I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna point it to the next scene. When I do that, that's the one that's gonna update, whatever that new scene is, right? So I'm not gonna update the other ones, just the current one. So the other ones, I'm gonna instantiate them, right? But then I wanna kill them. And when I kill those scenes, or I'm gonna pause them or whatever, right? I don't want those to update every time and give me sounds and collisions and all that stuff, right? I only want the scene that I'm currently on right now to give me an update. And that's why I switch it. My switcher down here tells me what scene is the active scene or the current scene, and that's the one that I'm going to assign. And I'm using the equals operator to make a reference or an alias. That's what I'm doing. Here's my alias. It's called current scene. It's going to be an alias for the actual current scene that I'm running. And I'm going to keep instantiating a new object of this scene every time I go into the switcher. Why? When I instantiate a new object, I kill the old one. Right? That's what happens. Make sense? I instantiate a new object, kill the old one. And if I kill the old one, it kills all the objects associated with that, all the variables and properties and values and all that stuff that are associated with that old scene, they're gone. So some people might think it's a dirty way of doing it because I'm killing the scene. There's no nice way of deleting or destroying or putting it back to memory. And JavaScript does memory management for you, right? It kind of does that. So, but we don't want to have a memory leak. Just we want to be able to kind of kill the old scene and add a new one. Okay. Cool. So this is the structure we need for our scenes. Now we need our scenes. Does anyone create any scenes for me? You did? All right. Did you do a pull request? Oh, I'm giddy with stuff. Okay, well, let's see. It doesn't matter, right? We can think about this. All right, so what I need to do here is first I need to, for myself, I need to do a commit to say my scene is done, right? So this is my state machine is pretty much partly done, right? So let's do that. So state machine, initial structure. I'm not done. I'm not gonna close it off yet. While my state machine initial structure is there, I can do a commit that's not related to an issue because I'm working on an issue. It's not done yet, right? It says push. So that's going to push up my changes, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to look at online, see what it looks like. So I'm going to refresh. I have one pull request. Okay, so I got a pull request to add to the menu scene. Let's take a look and see if this is cool. So I want to look at it. And I can look and see what has been done, because in the pull request itself, it tells me all the changes. So initiating version, he added core namespace, he did all these things, right? And then somewhere down the line, I want to be able to see if it's possible to merge, right? So how do I look at this request? One of this is this. I can look at commits. Here's all my commits. It's initiating version. This is all the stuff that Kevin put together. Here's fixed directories layout. He just did that. And then here's added my menu scene. This solves number 5. Is that how you're supposed to put solves? Trying to say put solves, close. I've tried everything. It doesn't work today for some reason, right? We got to look it up later on. Files changed are 22. So these are all the changes that I want to make. And I can approve or deny any of these changes, right? Okay. These are all the changes that I want to make. What if, just putting it out there, I want to, because he's got different commits than me. How do I accept this pull request? So here's my pull request, right? I want to accept it, right? I want to comment, and it says, this branch has conflicts that must be resolved. You know why, right? Your pull request, and thank you for that, but it's not good enough. The reason why it's not good enough and I got to close this one off is because there's too many conflicts, because you use the one we've been working on together. What you're supposed to do is take my 0.1, make a branch of it, and all you do is put in your menu scene. All right, that's how you're supposed to do it. So we'll try it again. But for now, I'm going to close this one off and say, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But there's too many conflicts. However, there are too many conflicts. Kind of stuff. Create a branch of my 0.1 branch, and then resubmit. This is a message that actually goes to Kevin, so I can comment, close and comment. So this pull request is closed. Kevin will get an email saying that this is the stuff that's happening, right? And he can resubmit one. Okay, let's see if I got any other pull requests. No, so no one is brave enough to do it again. Come on, you guys are watching. Send me a pull request. Fix that menu scene. Huh? I thought Omid was going to do what? Come on, man. I thought you were going to do it. Aren't you brave? You're going to be recorded for history, man. It's going to be on YouTube forever, right? He's like, no, forget it. Right? All right, let's do it. So I'm going to make I'll make one, and then we'll stop, okay? I'm not going to keep going because we can keep going forever. I can keep going this. And what I might do is, aside from you guys can go. And then what I'll do is I'll keep working on it to get the whole state machine working. You know what I'm doing. You can see how I'm progressing, right? So now you can see we don't have to step through every single part. I'm not going to record any of it, right? I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to kind of put the whole boilerplate working in together and show you how it works, right? Or I can continue to record, it doesn't matter, but you guys can all go after this, okay? You don't have to stay, okay? It would be very bad for me to keep you guys, stay here with me and suffer, right? No, it does not require. So let's finish this one scene, test it, and then once you see one, you can see the others, because you need to see one, because if you're gonna do your own, you need to see how I do one, okay? Let's check this out. And then you can go. All right, so I'm gonna do this really, really quickly. Again, I'm gonna be light on the comments, only to save time. And I'm also talking a lot, so that also says. So I'm gonna go to my scenes folder. I'm gonna go new file, and in my new file, I'm gonna add in the menu scene. So I'm gonna say menu, right? And this is .ts. In my menu scene, again, it's actually quite easy to add them in, because once you've got your, let's make sure that I have no issues, right? Object scene class end. No, I don't want that one. Here it is. The reason why I'm using this as a base structure is because I want to make sure that there's no errors, not for anything else, not because I can't do it on my own. So I go to module scenes. That's what the folder is called, right? In my module scenes, I want to export my class, which is going to be called menu, right? Which extends, what does it extend? My own custom class, my objects, right? Scene class. Right? So there's my objects.scene class. So remember, my objects.scene class is extending the container class. So when I do a constructor, right, then what I'm doing is I'm going to send in an empty constructor to the superclass, and that would end, what my superclass is my scene, my custom scene superclass, which is in turn going to forward my constructor off to the container superclass, which is empty. So it's okay. All right, there's a couple things. One thing I want to add in is I want to have a couple of objects that are private. So here in my private instance variables, I want to have a couple of objects that I want to create. Type Tom. Private, I want to call one is a menu label, all right, which is of type, guess what? Objects label. We worked hard to get those label and stuff in there. And the other one is a button, my private start button. Hey, I already have the start button. That's why I can do this one, start button. And which is my objects.button. There it is. So I need those two things. Here's my constructor. And by the way, I probably should do the proper thing. I'll leave it like this for now, and then I'll update it later. In my start method, so here's my start method. So I'm going to call it my public start. Right? Here's my start method. Remember that my start method is already been defined. I'm not overriding it, but whenever I call my start method, my constructor, right, for my superclass, which is being called, calls my start method by default. So I don't have to put it in here. It's already been put in here because of my superclass's constructor, right? And when it does that, it adds my my stuff to the stage. Okay, so again, it returns void, and I can just do the basic documentation for that, just like this, to prepare. I'll do those later. And then what I want to do is I want to add in a menu label. And my menu label, of course, is going to say this, that underscore menu label is equal to the new objects.label. And my label needs a bunch of stuff, like I said before, which is the menu scene. And sometimes what I like to do, again, with this long object is split it up over just for readability. That's why I'm doing it this way. You don't have to do this, but I like doing it because I can see. And again, I'm going to make it so that it's 60 pixels. 60 pixels. My fat fingers. 60 pixels, and then which is going to be the type. I'm going to make it consolas, some really ugly font, and then the color, which is 00000, black, right? I also need the X and Y coordinates, right? And for now, I haven't hard coded them, but I will later on. I'll make them into configuration options, like config scene. I'll make it config screen, right? So I can make a screen configuration too. But for now, we're going to make it so that it is the center screen, which is the center X and Y, and the center X is 320, and it's hard coded. I don't like that. And the other one is 240, right? So it's kind of the center of the screen. This thing is going to come up, right? And that's the first thing. That's my menu label, right? Now my menu label, as soon as I add it, I want to add it to this scene. This scene is a container. So instead of adding it to my stage, I'm going to add it to this scene. So I'm going to say this.addChild, this._ menu label, right? So I'm adding the menu label to this scene because the scene is a container, and the container is going to be added into the stage. They all get added sequentially. Okay. Next, my start button. Let's do that start button piece, right? So I'll say add the start button. And we'll do the same thing. We'll say this._ start button is equal to a new objects button. And the button needs a bunch of stuff, right? So we'll put that in there. What does it need? The first thing it needs is an image string. Now we'll say core.assets.get results. Wait, I don't need to do that anymore. Start button. That's all I need to do. And then I'm going to, after I've got that piece, it's going to ask for my X and Y numbers. And my X and Y numbers for this one is going to be the center screen again for the first one, so 320. And then my other one is going to be 240 plus about 180. So let's say 440, 420. Right? And if it's centered or not, and the answer is it's true, it's centered. So I'm going to say true. And we'll fix the centering on this one. But by the way, the reason why I'm figuring this out is because 320 is to the right, 240 is to the bottom, and I'm just putting it even lower. So 420. Now it's pretty low, and if it's too low, we'll fix it later on. Okay, again, I'll do the same thing. I'll say this.addChild. What's that? Am I making a mistake? You guys laughing. Start button. What happened? Why? What? Well, what did I do wrong? Tell me.
You said 420, and then you said it was pretty low, and then Miguel said actually it's pretty high.
Let's continue. I'll add an event listener. So start button, event listener. And I'm trying my best. Listener for the click event, right? So I'll say this._ start button .on. I can do that, a kind of click event, and of course I'm gonna do a start button.click. Don't have that yet, but we will, and I'll pass in a reference to this, right? I pass in a reference to this because it makes it easier to keep this context. Add this scene to the global scene container, right? And we're going to do that by saying stage. Remember, stage is part of our core. So core.stage.addChild this. We're taking this at the end and adding it to the stage. This means this whole scene is being added to the stage. So it's a cascade of adds. I have my scene class, I add stuff into that, and it's the parent for all my stuff. And then I take my scene class and add it to the stage, right? Okay, cool. And then what I want to do is any of my updates are going to happen underneath here. So if I have an update, I'll say my update is going to be here. It's going to return void. So I don't have any updates from my scene class. So I'm going to say something like, scene updates. So the noise, what happens? You distract me. Scene updates happen here. This is a stub, right? I don't have any updates yet. Probably won't have them, right? And then there's going to be an area for my event handlers. If I want to put an area for that, which I will. And under my event handlers, I'm going to put in my private start button click event, right? Which is going to be of type event, create.js.mouse event, because that's the type of event it's going to be, which is going to return void. And inside there, we're going to do something like switch the scene. That's what we normally would do, right? But for now, when we click on that button, it's not going to switch the scene because we have no other scenes, right? So what are we going to do? For now, we're just going to change the text of the label, right, to clicked. So change Change text label to clicked. So we'll say that for now. Now change label text to clicked. I'll be okay. Okay, so how do I do that? I do it like this. I say this dot underscore label menu label dot text is equal to clicked. Now this is dangerous. Again, we're not measuring and all that stuff, but who cares? But really, what we want to say is something like this. This is what it should be. It should be something like this. This is the code that it should be there. So scene. Remember the global scene. So scene. If I want to access my global scene from this, when I have access to it here, that means again this is an error. This is an exposure, and I do it. This is really good to control what you expose or not, and to really know what you're exposing. I want to go here and export, and the exports in the future are going to tell us all the holes we have to plug. These are holes in our code right now. We're going to plug these holes later on. We're going to figure out a way to do that, right? So we're going to export the scene, but going back to that scene itself, which is this one, which is not that one, which is this one, menu. What we're going to do is, this is what it would do. We would say something like scene, right, is equal to config.scene.play. We're going to set the new, we want to see the default scene to the play scene. This is what it should be. When I click the start button, it's supposed to play your scene, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to say change scene. We're going to call the change scene method. Guess what that means? If I call the change scene method and I got to expose it, right? I got to expose it, right? Now remember, it's bad, but we got to figure out how do I do this without. For now, let's expose it. And it's a good practice for us to understand what we have exposed and what we don't. So go back. So go back to my change scene method, which is this one, right? And we want to export. These are all the holes, again, like we say in our code, right? So here's our export, and now I can do something like, eventually I'll be able to do something like this, change scene. But it wouldn't be change scene, it'll be core.change scene. And this one wouldn't be scene, right? It'd be core.scene, right? And again, every time I use the word core, you know what it tells me? I need a class. That's what it tells me. All this stuff that I'm doing in my core, I need a class that's inside my namespace that I instantiate, and then I pass the class through into the other scenes, right? Somehow, or a reference to the class, right? That's what I want to do. Some kind of object I want to pass around. I don't want to expose these. These are holes that are in my program, and I'm exposing them. Okay. Okay, good. I've done my scene, my menu. I'm almost done, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best to get this done as fast as possible. I want to complete my new object that I added in. So I have to go to my index.html. I know that it's got to be underneath my config scene, definitely underneath this one, on my label. So it's going to come before my game and before here. And the way I know that is because my scene has to exist, my scene superclass before my subclass, right, should exist. It doesn't have to be, but I like to kind of organize things like this. So scenes, this would be menu, right? And then what I want to do is inside my core, in my references, I want to do the same thing under scene. I want to do the same. I'm just going to copy this whole thing, right? So that I have a reference to my scene class. Well, objects, it won't be objects, it'll be scenes. And this will be, notice it gives me an underline until I get the right path, menu. Then the underline goes away when my references go away. So in my game.ts, I'm almost there. I can almost uncomment this. But if I uncomment this, there is no menu. I haven't defined a menu. And I haven't said my current scene is equal to menu because I don't have a menu object. That means up here somewhere, underneath my scene, I should set up a menu. So let menu, right, is equal to of type scenes dot menu. It's just a reference. Oof. Okay, so why? Why all this work? Why am I doing scenes in the first place? Why not just instantiate everything in the main stage, right? And then wipe it out and re-put it in, because it becomes unsustainable. Once you start going into more than a couple of levels, forget it. You become crazy. It's nuts. You can never do like, you know, your dragon game. Remember the dragon game? That was all supposed to be like this, right? There's no way you could have done 15 scenes in your dragon game without a scene switcher like this, right? It would be impossible. And that's why we did, the original intent of the dragon game was not to use what your game was, but to use the scene switcher, to use this methodology, right? Which you would have got day 1 or day 2, right? Kind of thing. Okay, we're not trying to cry over spilt milk here. It's done. Let's test it locally to see that we haven't made any mistakes and we can find some bugs. We have a lot of stuff here. We did 2 big changes and we haven't tested anything. That's a lot of testing, right? We have to do. All right, let's go back down here and I'm gonna kind of clear everything else. And before we do a commit, I'm going to do light-server, which is gonna run everything locally. Here's my menu scene. All right, so it looks like menu scene. Guess what? We're good. It wouldn't say menu scene unless I instantiated my menu scene, right? It would never say that. It says menu scene because it's gone to my menu scene already, right? Now if I click start, it should say clicked, right? And my next scene would be to go back to my play scene, and my play scene would go to my game over scene, and my game over scene will go back to my menu scene. I would make that kind of, that my boilerplate will be this. It'll be give you the ability to change what's inside your menu to whatever you want. That's why it's called a boilerplate. It's just a template for you to use to make your games with. That's what we're making right now. And then the play scene you replace with whatever stuff you want, and then the game over scene you replace with whatever stuff you want. That's what we're making. Okay, I know I've confused everybody, but please bear with me while we do this kind of stuff. Is there anything that you guys understood? How about that way? Instead of like, did you not understand? Does anyone not understand? Is there anyone who really doesn't understand what I'm doing? Please put up your hand now. Even if you're like this, it's okay. I mean, the more you see it, remember this is the second week you've seen this ever, right? Yes, you don't understand. Completely? Like completely not? Okay. That's okay. At least you're on. I like honesty. It's better to be honest, right? Because remember what we're going to be doing here, right? So now that I've tested out, just to close out, so let you go for the day, I'm going to stop this, right? And this works. I know this works. I'm going to upload this to GitHub. I'm going to say clear, right? And I'll say git add dot, because I'm adding all those changes in. Git commit -m, right? And by the way, if you want to do it in one step, you can always do -a -m, which actually adds everything first and then does the commit. You can do it in one step if you really want to. We're not going to do that. We just break it off into 2. And we're going to say added menu scene, right? That's what we're going to do, which closes, which closes issue number and whatever the hell the issue number is for the menu scene, because that's the menu scene that's up there, right? So if I go to, and you know I did this already, this module, I've already closed this one off, right? I did this last time and I didn't close it off. I can close this feature off too. But the menu scene is number 5. And you know what? I'll say we'll close off because I didn't finish my thing off. Close number 5. Whereas, all right, and then git push origin 0.1, which is going to push everything up, right? And then what I'm going to do is, if you look over here, I need to close a couple of these off. So this one gets closed off. So number 5, menu scene is done. So I say close issue. I can comment and close. I just close. This is close. You can do it this way as well, really quickly. And also the other one is this one is closed as well. That's done. So if you don't want to do comments, you don't have to. And then when I look at my milestones, you can see that I'm 60% complete. Why is this a really good thing? Right? Because when you're tracking your time in a real world project, right? I can track from the moment you came in to the moment you're done, what you did for the day, and how much you're complete, right? So in a real world environment, I can pay you according to the hours you worked and how much you've done, right? Make sense? And also you can work with other people. Yes, Neil, tell me.
Pardon?
Tell me. Would you have a question?
Oh, I did actually. If we wanted to just use your code because ours doesn't work,
yes.
Would it be cloning or forking it?
Forking. But you'd fork it first. So you kill your fork a new one, right? Fork a new one, right? And then when you fork the new one, clone it again, right? Yeah, because your clone would be a different. You want to clone my latest commit. You want to clone my latest version, right? So in order for you to do that, you kill your fork and then clone my, create a new fork of my current project in my with my current my branch, that particular branch. You don't care about my master branch. You want to clone that branch, right? And then from there, what you do is you clone that, and then you continue from there. Questions, gentlemen? You guys are all good? You guys understood everything? It's all perfect? Tammy, everything good so far?
Yes.
Aaron?
In the scenes,
Yeah.
for example, the menu scene, why can't we instantiate like the label and the button in the constructor?
Okay. Let's think about that. I could. But remember that the constructor, I want to keep as clean as possible, right? Not that I don't want to do the constructor. I could, when the constructor's created, I can create that. But what if in the future, and this is my future thinking, I want to use the constructor and I want to separate the constructor from my start method. The start method is almost like my initializer method. And I can keep my constructor method nice and clean, right? My constructor method, I don't want to clutter it with a bunch of stuff too much, right? And that's the reason. But yes, you could. You could format your scene class the way you like. Me, what I'm doing is I'm having my start scene and my update, my start method, my update method to match for people who are doing game programming here in college, what it looks like on Unity. Unity uses the start method and the update method. I want to use the start method and the update method. So when you do Unity, you do mine. The transition is minor. You can actually take my code, put it in Unity and C#, and you're ready to go, pretty much. Okay, that's the reason. That's the underlying motive behind it. Any other questions? How about the girls that are quiet? Half of you left. Where'd half your friends go, right? They don't know. Half the friends. How about the guys in the corner? You guys okay in the corner? You're nodding your head because you don't want to talk about the guys over there. You're okay? You guys okay? Okay. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to continue to record for people who want to go. You can go right now. And I'm going to fix up my menu, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. For people who want to stay, it's optional, totally optional. You don't have to stay. I'm going to keep doing to build up my entire boilerplate at this point, right? And I'll get it done. Okay, so you guys go, and I'll keep working. All right. So one thing to check is, take care, guys. Thank you so much. One thing to check is my Azure websites to see if it's still working, right? And I do see a hello world start, right? That's a problem. That's a problem. Hello world start. Why is it say hello world start and it doesn't say my menu? Because it's only looking at the master branch when it's delivering, right? My master branch is the one that's producing this, right? My 0.1 branch is not going on Azure right now, and that's beautiful. That's why I'm working parallel to my master branch, and my master branch is not on Azure, right? It's local. When I'm ready to put it on Azure, I just merge the branches, which I'm going to do later on. Thank you so much, guys. Kevin, thank you so much. And I appreciate the attempt. It was good. All right, thank you. Try again next time. Tammy, thank you so much. You guys sticking around or you guys taking off? I guess most of you are going, right? Maybe not. Okay. Take care. For those people taking off, thank you.
Sorry. Interrupting your video?
No problem. You can interrupt. This is going to see people are leaving. Thank you. Yeah.
The quality of our assignment isn't because our old teacher did this. It doesn't have to follow your other exams you've seen.
No, don't worry.
Not at all.
No, as long as it does what it's supposed to do. Like if it meets requirements, I'm okay. Okay, I'm not going to be hard on you guys. I can't.
I took this as a chance to be lazy.
No, yeah, that's good. Just be lazy and get it done, right? So if that makes sense. It's kind of a weird thing to say. But anyways, let's continue. Are you guys sticking around or are you taking off? You gonna go? You're gonna stick around or you gonna sticking around? You guys taking off? Tim, you taking off or are you sticking around? All right. Let's see if I can stick around for a little bit longer to get this done. Okay, so we've done for those people who are still watching, we've done our menu scene. I'm going to add in a couple more. So I'm going to add in just as stubs. This is really neat. I can add in my over.ts file, and I can also add in a new file called play.ts. Let's add them both in at the same time this time, over and play. And Well, the great thing is because I have my menu scene, I can just copy and paste everything. Watch. Whoop. There's my menu scene, and I just have to copy it and rename it for my over scene. We'll just call this at the top, instead of menu, it'll be over, right? I'll save that, and I'll do the same thing for my play scene really quickly. So here's my play scene. Sorry. Got a bit of a text story, guys. Okay, so so I got my play scene. So nothing much is going on in here, but I mean I've got my scenes in place. But now what I got to do is you guys taking off, or are you guys going? Arlena, bye. So all I've done is copied and pasted my scenes I took my menu scene and I copied and pasted it into my play and my over scene. All right. Bye. So I got a bit of a problem, right? Because I'm looking for some buttons. I'm looking at my play and my over scene, and I need a couple of buttons, right? For example, my start button is cool, but when I should probably have a button that says exit or over, and maybe restart. So I need like an over and a restart button. And if I look at my example scenes that I have already in play, just by looking at my code here. Again, it's not difficult stuff. It's just if you've never seen it before, then it becomes more challenging for you to look at, right? Because you're looking at it going, I don't know what he's doing, right? So the idea here is that you can see it and you can get what I'm doing, right? All right, let's see what the button is. So my start over button, I got a start over button, and I'm also missing a some way of going to my game over scene. So I'm going to get an exit button. So we'll do an exit button, like a game over button or whatever. Click game over. So I can test each of the scenes. All right, so that's what I'm doing. So how do I do that? Well, I only have one button, my start button.ping. So I need to kind of go in there into my stuff and create a couple more assets. This is minor work for me, and it should be for you too, especially when you're just double kind of copying and pasting. So I'm going in here, here's my boilerplate, going to my assets, here's my images, and I'm going to double click on my start button.ping and then just add a couple more. I'm going to add in like a restart button, right? So instead of start, we're going to add this called restart, and we're going to kind of put this in here. We have a few more assets, right? Again, this is just for testing. In my opinion, you guys should be, putting in your own buttons, your own assets that look a little nicer than this. Let's actually just undo that. Sorry, I don't want to go off kilter with this one. Restart. Again, all I want to do is center everything approximately so it's in the middle. There we go. I'm just doing it by eye. So I'm going to file, save as, in the same folder, restart button. Right, there it is. And the other one would be exit. Exit, right? Because I want to do an exit button. And again, I'm just going to kind of put it in the middle approximately, so it looks kind of. I'm using my eye to do this right now just to save time without messing up. There's my exit button, file, save as, and I'm just going to make some more buttons. Exit button. And then, so start, exit, restart, and then maybe we'll make an end button to get me to the end scene. So I'll have a couple of buttons. Or maybe next, make a next button. How about that? Next. Because I can go to the next scene, and if I have more than one scene, I can go next and next and next. I've realigned there. Oh, it's approximately right. I mean, and the reason for this is if I do it wrong, file, save as, and if I say next button, so I get a bunch of buttons. And this will actually test my CNET a little nicer because I have more assets. Okay, now that I have more assets, I've got to put them inside my asset manifest, inside my scene. So if I go back to my game.ts file, so here's my in my core. So in my game.ts file, I only have a start button. Let's add the other ones. So comma, and I'll kind of take this one. Remember, I have the restart button. Put them in no particular order. So restart. Right. Notice they're just taking on the same shape as everything else. And I also have my X button. By the way, if you forget, you can always go into look in your assets. So I got my next button, my restart button, and my exit button. Okay, good. So copy a bunch of buttons here. Exit button. I don't know if I'll use all of them, but definitely some of them. Okay, good. So I've got those. And now that I've got those buttons, I can go into my scenes. So I can go back into my scenes, into my game over. And what I want to put is, instead of a start button, I'm going to rename this thing, rename a symbol as a restart button. Right? So enter, which is going to rename everything down in here. Start button, which I'm going to name this one, rename this one, rename the symbol to restart button. Just a little bit of work here to get this going. Restart button. Click. There it is. And this is going to be the restart button, but the restart button is going to look like restart button. There it is. So restart button. And my menu scene isn't going to say menu scene because this is the over scene. It's going to say game over. So game over. Okay. That's going to save that one. So my game over scene is pretty much done. Instead of menu label, it's not going to be menu label, it's going to be game over label. So we rename this thing, this symbol. So instead of saying menu label, it's going to say game over label. Game over label, right? So all I'm doing is renaming everything so it makes sense, right? Game over label, objects button, the restart button. This is just stub information so we can test things out. That's all it's for. Now, when I do my game over, right, and I do my restart, restart's going to go back to the play scene. I don't have a play scene. I do have a play scene now, so I can put that back into play. But I don't have my scene. My core scene can go back there, so I can probably do one of these. There we go, core scene, core change scene. I can put these back into play to check them out. Okay, this is done. So my over scene is done. My menu scene I got to update because I can start putting these back in. So my core was going to go to play, and I can change scene. And now when I click on the menu, I don't care about it being clicked anymore. That can be gone. So I'm just going to just change the scene for me. I better take care of that over here too, so I don't need this anymore. There we go. So I'll switch the scene to the play scene. Switch the scene to the play scene. Both menu and the over scene will switch it back. And then what I want is my play scene. It's my actual play scene. Instead of my menu label, it'll be the play label. So we rename this one. Rename symbol. And we'll say play label. And again, the reason why we're doing it this way is that way it's easy. This is instead of the restart button. So I'm in my, I'll put the next button in there. So rename symbol, next button. There we go. And here's my play label. This will be the play scene, right? And there's my, instead of my start button, it's the next button. Okay, so everything's the same. Core stage, add child. This is different. This is different here because instead of it going to my my play scene, it's going to go to my over scene. So this is going to go to game play over, and this is going to change the scene. Right. We're done. So play scene is done, menu scene is done, over scene is done. But now we have to add them in properly. Let me make my changes first to the core, because in my core game.ts files, I don't have a menu, I don't have an over or a play scene. Let's add those in. So let over is going to be called scenes dot over, and let play is going to be scenes dot play. And then down inside my method here, this was open. Let's fix these ones. So play is equal to play. Current scene is equal to play. Over is equal to over. Current scene is equal to over. So I'm uncommenting those pieces. So now everything is. Let me just kind of highlight everything and format my code so it looks nice. There it is. So it's all nice looking. Okay, so that's all my pieces in place. And now I've got to add them into my index.html, the other pieces that I just added. So I've got my menu scene. Now here's a question. Should I put in which scene should I put in first in order? My menu scene should know about my play scene, right? So my play scene should be first before my menu scene. And my over scene should know about my play scene because it's going to go back. So my over scene should be first. My play scene should be second. My menu scene should be third. I know it sounds weird, but you don't have to do it this way. I just do it because I like to, make sense in my mind how it sets up. So this would be over, this would be play, and that would be menu, right? Make sense? Okay, so over will be first. Now again, you might think the other way around. My play should be first. My over would know about play, because then it would replay, right? Restart. But let's see how it works. And then, of course, I got to go into my core and go to my references and add them in. So I'm just going to one of these. Now, again, you might see repetition, but that's how we do it, right? It's pretty simple. Play. Okay, let's check it out. So I want to test it locally to make sure that it works. So I'm going to go here, clear the screen, and then I'll say something like light server. So we'll launch it and we'll refresh just to make sure. I've got my start button. It's pretty low, but there's a reason for it because I can add other buttons in here. Click start. Hey, there's my play scene. Take a look. If I click next, there's my game over scene. If I click restart, it goes back to my play scene. If I go next, it goes back to my over scene. If I go restart, it goes to my play scene. And it'll keep on moving over and over again, right? So I shows different button, it shows different things, and I've got my state machine. So my state machine is pretty much done, pretty much. Still a few changes I want to make, so some enhancements I want to add in, but let's upload or update my situation here. So here, let's stop this. So I want to say git add dot, git commit minus m, and I'll say something like added play scene and over scene. This closes issue number milestones. So my gameplay scene and my over scene are issues 6 and 7. And also my state machine, it's done. So 6, 3, 6, and 7. Let's see if that works. Issue number 6 and issue number 7. Okay, this is it. Enter. Oh. And then I'll have to say git push origin 0.1. That pushes everything up. And if I refresh, I can go into my features, my options here for my state machine is done. So I'm going to close this off. And I'm going to go to my other issue. My play scene is done. So I'm going to close this one off. And I want to go into my working over game scene and then close this one off. I'm almost done. Look, if I go to my issues, I see that my milestones are at 90%, right? So I need one more milestone to close off. Let's see what my issue is. What is my issue? You need to create an asset object in the object's namespace. So it's a feature, and the asset object, remember I talked about this? In the assets namespace, right? In the object's namespace, the asset object basically gives me typing for my manifest. That's all it does. So it's an assets object. So now there's different ways of doing this. I could make it so that it's an interface instead of a class, right? It still could be objects dot assets, right? But it's what it does is it creates just a way of me formatting my code. Right? Let me show you how to do this. So let's do that. Let's make the interface. So I'm going to go into my objects class, objects, and go a new file. We'll call this the assets.ts file. And we'll make it the module will still be in my objects namespace. There it is. And then what we want to do is we want to export an interface. It's interesting. It's a different thing than a class, right? Now, here's something that's interesting, and let's put this out there. It says cannot find name interface, right? But what it is interface is when I did I do it right? Export. Oh yeah, how about the name of the interface, which would be good, which is assets, right? So my interface assets, it's going to have two properties: an ID, which is a string, right? So ID, and it's going to be public ID, which is of type string, and a public I wonder if it's already public because it's an interface. I think it is. And my source, which is also a string. And I think they're public because it's an interface, not a class. I'm going to use the public keyword. If I hover over it, it tells me property of signature expected, which is really like this. That's it. That's my assets object. Let's see if this works. First of all, I got to connect it. So I got to go back, do the same thing I did before. So I got to go into my index.html and put it in here. Now this might be a little bit of a pain in the ass. When you see this over and over again, you're like, do you really have to connect everything? Yeah, you do, because it's a web page, right? If you don't do this kind of stuff, and we're just going to put this under, because it's an object, I'm going to put it underneath the config. So I'm going to say objects, and we'll put this asset class to see if I'm right, because I'm going to make sure I don't want to make any errors. Object assets is what I called it. Why did I do that? Did I rename it assets? Let me take a look. Assets. Okay, that's okay. The assets class should really be asset class. In fact, I'll rename it. So I'll say assets. And what I'll do is I'll close off these extra files here just to make sure that there's no conflict, because when you don't close them off, there's sometimes a conflict. And inside, I'll just rename this thing. So I'll rename the asset, rename assets to asset. And I have to kill in my folder, I have to kill the extra ones. So I'm going to do that in the operating system, because otherwise I'll be in trouble. I'm going to go here to, this is what happens when you make mistakes. So I don't need assets.js and the map. I can kill those things. I just need those asset. Okay, good. So then when I do that, I go over here, it's updated, asset, and asset.ts and asset.js. Notice that there isn't any, there's no translation. When I run this code, I get nothing. Interfaces are so awesome because there is no JavaScript code. You know what it's for? Type hinting. That's all it's for. That's all we're really doing anyway. And that's why they recommend, for small classes like this one, they recommend interfaces and not classes, because it doesn't add any additional overhead to your project. Okay, but what it really does is if I go into my core, it gives me some good type hinting. So here's my core. And I meant to go into my reference TS, which would be under here. I'll just copy this one. Do you guys understand about the whole reference path thing? Objects. Asset. Okay, so I got my asset, I got everything else going. And now what I can do in my game.ts, where I had my data, see how I made it if I hover over it, it says my asset data is actually an array of assets, right? So it's asset array. So it's an objects.asset array, right? That's what it is, an objects.asset array. Asset does not exist in type objects. Did I call it assets? So I'm telling you, it's just bizarre. And sometimes what you need to do is, I've got to check and see what I made it, because it just drives me crazy. This is where when you make a mistake on the namespace, it's just that messed. Asset. Oh, I did. Huh? Sometimes you have to close down and restart, like just because it's trying to keep track and stuff inside your files. So sometimes I close my game.ts file off and then relaunch it, and that sometimes takes care of the issue. Yeah, we know it exists. Objects.asset, right? Property assets does not exist. It does exist. We know it does, right? Because if I go objects, look, if I by itself, if I go objects dot asset, right? It does exist.
Asset data colon objects dot asset. So then you have to put the new.
Yeah, but oh yes, yes, it'll be okay. Yes, and it's a new array of asset. Yeah, but it wouldn't be a new; it'd be just one of these, right? Because this is a new. So it'd be what you're saying is, it should be objects dot right. I quote him objects dot assets array. So this object dot asset array is a new array. I can't use the new syntax because it would have to be new. I would have to cast, and the way it would look is something like this. It was equal to a new array of type objects dot assets, right? And then what it would be is I'm initializing, right? So this is an array initializer, right? So I would have to put curly braces or something in there, right? So I can't do that. That's all I'm saying. But that's this way here. If you see these angle brackets, angle brackets means cast the array. The array is of type objects dot asset. That's how I would normally do it if I want to make an array of assets. But this is the short form, and this works just fine. Okay, so that's what I've done. And so what it does is it gives me an interface, and it does give me more asset data, because when I hover over asset data now, I know it's an objects.asset as opposed to just random. And if I go over to my asset data and I hover over, you can see that I get the code hinting that I wanted. So Kevin's little issue is solved. So now I'm going to kind of go into here. I made all these changes, right? Like a bunch of changes for that one. And I'll say added, asset interface. That's what I really want to do. This closes issue number. Let's see which one that is. Issue number 10. Now I'm closed. Now I'm still. We got to see if there's a problem, and I'm going to merge. This is the most important, piece that I'm waiting for. And I was hoping to get here a little faster, but it is what it is. It's taking me an extra 37 minutes or whatever it is. No, because you have to make sure you rename them, make sure that it's all right. And you know why it's saying duplicate? Because you've copied and pasted like I did. Is that what you did? Yeah. So you have to close them down and reopen them, and then it'll because it's trying to keep track of the compiler. So push. All right, so I pushed everything. Let's just see what my status is. So I'll say let's go to clear, and I'll say git status, and you can see that I'm on branch 0.1, and this is something really to see, guys, right? What I want to do is I want to say git tag 0.1, right? I'm actually adding a tag in here to say this is version 0.1 is what I'm doing with the git tag thing, right? And now what I want to do is I want to go back to my master branch, right? But first I want to close my issue. So go up online. Here's my issues. I want to go into this one, and I want to close it down. All right, there we go. And now, if you notice, because all my issues are closed, I'm at 100% complete for my version 0.1 of my boilerplate. If I want to continue working on my boilerplate and add other things, which we could totally, or enhancements or whatever, like the next version 0.2, might be a bunch of bugs you guys find, right? So that might be bugs and everything else that you say, well, Tom, this didn't work, or Tom, this didn't work, or Tom, and you can add a bunch of these things in there, and then I'll go through, and if I have a problem, I'll go through, and you can collaborate with me even though you're not part of my repository whatsoever. You guys aren't even part of that, right? But you know, I have these issues. Okay, so now that I've done this, I could close off this version, right? Because I'm done. 0.1 is done. I don't have version 2, so this is closed, so done. Right, so I've got 1 closed, 0 open, right? And now what I can do is I can merge. I'm going to do that on the command line. So first, I want to switch. This is the key parts that I couldn't record, and that's why I'm recording this part. So for you guys who are watching remotely or watching later, can see this, right? I want to switch to the master branch, right? So notice I'm on my master branch. Now my master branch is not clean for some reason. Let's take a look and see why. Git status. Okay, so I did a couple of things here. Core game.js. There's also objects button.js. Not sure why, but I had cleaned that up before, right? Pretty sure, right? And it could have been that the way I pulled it or whatever. And there's also some untracked files here that I don't want. So let's go back to my master branch. Now, if I go back to, this is funny, if I go back to Visual Studio Code, and if I go over here like this, you can see that, you know, if I go back to my objects, look, I'm back to there. I don't have those objects anymore. It's like it's all gone again. So I've got all these changes, these files here, and I got my game.js. What, you know, I don't mean some stuff that's changed. These are just compiles. That's what have happened. These things have just compiled, and I've got to take care of these things, right? This is before I merge my branches. It's really, really important that I do that, right? So now I got to see what I've changed. I don't think I've changed anything. I just recompiled everything. What's going to happen is I'm going to have a conflict for sure because of this, because this should have been clean. Let me check out something else. Let me see on my gitignore file. Right, so I got a gitignore file. I got to add that in. So I'm going to kind of add in a new gitignore file, new file. This is a problem. This is where I'm going to add a conflict. Gitignore. My gitignore file should have the same things. Now, if I'm really careful about it, what I should probably do, just to say that there's no differences, is go up online. Here's my code. Look at my 0.1 branch for a second. Go to my gitignore file, just to be exactly the same, right? So here's my gitignore file. And put all those things in exactly the same order. Just, this is going to resolve my issues, right? Or so I hope. So bump, bump. All right, cool. So that takes away one of the issues, but it adds a gitignore file that I got to add in. And now, I don't know what these are, game.ts, but game.js got added in some other stuff here. Looks like I changed I took some stuff out, it looks like. These are the changes that happen, right? So I'll say updated project, right? Master branch, updated master branch before merge. I'm really doing. Do that. Good. Now my branch is clean. Let me just try that again. So if I go to git status, my master branch is clean. Oh, it's clean, but it's not clean, right? I want to do git merge 0.1. Okay, so I got some conflicts. This is really cool. So it says warning, ref name 0.1 is ambiguous. Auto merging scripts objects button.js map, la 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 la. And then it's telling me what to do, right? It says automatic merge failed, fix conflicts, and then commit the result. So this is how you commit you can fix the merge, right? In the master branch. Always the master branch. You've always fixed in the master branch. So here's all the conflicts I have, lots and lots of them. No, it looks like a lot, but really it's not. So here's merge changes, and this is stage changes. Let's take a look at the merge problems. These are all the merge problems I have. These M's for the merge changes that I made, right? And remember, if I look at the changes, these are all the conflicts. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 conflicts. 1, 2, 3, 4 conflicts, right? So if I go back to this, what it's going to do is inside this area here, it's going to put in some stuff to show me what it is, right? So an example will tell me, well, which one do you want, Tom? So we have point in here that it does that. And you got to look through these changes, right, to find the problem. So it looks like this one's good. This one's okay, right? But remember that my function core, I can always go recompile later when I do it. My function core, even if I accept it, this is okay. So I'll add that in. And this one, let's take a look at this one now. Okay, you know what? I'll accept this one, and I'll accept that. They're just map changes and everything else. And probably hindsight being 2020, so I'll say merged branch 0.1, my changes, and that's maybe I should just stop there and see what happens. So I go here, and I'll say git status. The branch is ahead of the origin master by 11 commits. Use git push to publish your local branch, right? So git push origin master. And now, if everything goes well, I've published everything to the master branch, and my older 0.1 branch is still there. And if I want to, I can kill it, right? So I can do something like, because I've done 0.1 is done. I don't have to go back there, right? If I don't want to. Now, typically, we don't do that. Typically, we leave the branches in place because it doesn't bother. You can have as many branches as you want, right? But let's take a look up online and see what happened, right? So if I go back to this lesson, you can see now that the master branch includes all my changes. See this closed issue number 10, number 8, all those things are changed. And this says merge branch 0.1. And from a release perspective, I can go back, right, and I can create a new release. So here's my tags, right? If I want to add a new release. But here's my releases, so I can go create a new release. And my tag version is 0.1, right? My release title is, initial pre-release of COMP397 summer 2016 boilerplate. Again, this is all configuration. And I click on this is a pre-release because it's 0.1, right? And then publish the release. Done. So it keeps track of my changes. My 0.1 is my tag, right? And if I go back to my stuff, you can see I've got one release. I've got 2 branches. So I still got that 0.1 branch. I can always go back there, right? And if I want to do a git status, so if I go back to here, clear, git status, you can see your branch is up to date with origin master, nothing to commit. And if I want to just to make sure, I can always do a git pull and check to see if there's anything there, already up to date, so nothing's wrong. But what I can do is test it locally now, because now I'm on the master branch again, back to master, right? Because I've got all my buttons. These are all things I added in, right? And I could have added other commits, like when I added my assets, I could have said, I'm adding my assets, but I rushed, right? Because I wanted to get this done for you guys, and so I can go home too, right? But one thing I should probably do is test, and I'm going to kind of go Control-Shift-B. No, that's good. So compilation complete, just to make sure that it's happening. And I want to test it locally. So again, I'm going to kind of open this up and go light-server, test it locally, and refresh. So I can go to start, play, next, restart, next, restart, and keep going back. And if I refresh, it goes to start. Good. So all that's working. So the buttons all work. Now, because I put this up on Azure, and I've kind of uploaded my master branch, my Azure should be updated as well. Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go to COMP397, azurewebsites.net, and refresh. And then we'll see if it works. And there it is. So it's up on Azure, start, next, restart, next. If I refresh, it goes to start again. Done. So that's everything you guys need for your boilerplate. I know that took a long time, and it's way longer than I wanted to, but that's the way it works. Now, when I make my new scene, in order for me to make my new, if I want to make my new repository, what I can do is I can if I want to rename my repository, so instead of lesson 8, it says boilerplate. How do I do that? What would you do? I want to make a boilerplate. So I could copy it, download it, and start originally, say, version 0.1. I could do that, right, of my boilerplate. I could do a new remote, right? I could add a new remote, which is what I want to do. So, so if you want to know how to do that, you can always go to add or remove a remote. Right? How do I remove a remote? First thing, so get remote minus v, so all the remotes, and then get remote remove whatever the destination is, right? And then I can see if it's gone, right? So let's take a look and see if that's there. So I want to remove the remote, and I want to add a new remote, and we'll create our new project with all the commits instead of a new place that says, you know, COMP397 summer 2016 boilerplate, which is what I really want to go to. That's the last step. So get remote minus v. So I have this one, right, which is my destination, right? Let's see if it works the way it says. So it says clear. So get remote rm destination. No, so it has to be master or origin. Origin. Get remote remove origin. There we go. Now, if I go get remote minus v, I got nothing. I got no remotes. Now I can add a remote like we normally do. And the way to do that is to go back up here, right? Make a new repository. And I'll say COMP397 summer 2016 boilerplate, which is really what I wanted. My boilerplate, create my repository. And now what I want to do is I want to get this piece and go down here and paste, and I want to push to that remote. And let's see what I get. So does it retain everything? Do I get all my branches? Do I just get the master branch? What does it do? And this is important for us to do because then you'll see what happens to the other ones, right? So if I refresh, I have just the master branch, right? And I have 0 releases. I could do the release, but this is my comp to 2016 boilerplate. Let's make that release happen again, just because I should have done it probably here. Create a new release. We'll call it 0.1, right? And we'll say initial pre-release of COMP397 or 2016 boilerplate. Yep. Done. So we had a release. We don't have any issues, but I can start off in this branch now with my boilerplate. That's the initial pre-release. It's not my 0.1, right? And what I can do is now we can start new issues if I wanted to work with my boilerplate to create other stuff, right? But what am I going to do now? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my boilerplate and start off my mail pilot project. And just to get us started, let's do it. So how do I do that? I'm not going to work on it, but some no time. But it's going to be working like this. So if I go back, I have my, I'll kill this too, I don't need that right now. I can see that I have my lesson 8 and my boilerplate. My boilerplate's complete. I want to duplicate my boilerplate. And I don't care about the previous commits because my boilerplate's perfect right now. So it's my boilerplate keeps track of all that stuff. If I want to create a brand new thing, we're going to say mail pilot build. Will be the mail pilot build or the mail pilot demo, whatever, for summer 2016. Right, this is for this one. So this is a brand new one. And what I want to go in here is open up this one. And I'll say CD. I'll pull this one down, kill all the repositories in there. So remove minus dash RF git. There it is, no more git repository, gone. And then what we'll do is git init, right? Git add dot, git commit minus M, I'll say initial commit, right? There's initial commit. Then git push, but I don't have my remote, so let's do that. Let's go into this, go plus your repository. I'll say COMP397 summer 2016 mail pilot build. There it is, your repository. And take the last two pieces, put it back in here, and push. Now I've got my new repository in place. Now there's some changes I need to make, but before I make changes, because everything is good, I'm going to make a new branch, 0.1. All right, because this is my mail pilot build. It's nothing to do with my boilerplate, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git branch, right? 0.1, git checkout, right? 0.1. So now I'm in my branch 0.1. And now when I go here, I want to launch my Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to open up, file open. I'm going to open up my mail pilot. And in here, the only change I want to make right now into this branch is my README file. So my README file is going to be mail pilot build for Centennial College, save. That's the one change I want to make. And I also want to add in some assets from my MP assets so that I have all those assets in place for you guys. So it's ready to go. So you don't have to do any of those things. Just to save time for next time, right? So where do I get them from? I think I might have them locally, so I don't have to go pull them. That would be really, really bad. Let's see if I have them. There they are. Images, probably more than I want. Why did I do that? I hate when I do that stuff. Yeah, here it is. Okay, that's better. So I want these ones. So in audio, do I have an audio? First of all, let's take a look. I don't think I do. Assets, I got images. So I'm just going to copy the whole folder. Copy, audio to assets, paste. And I'm going to do the same thing with fonts. Copy fonts, paste. And here's my images. This is where I need more of them. And I'm just going to copy the ones I need. So for now, I need the cloud, island, ocean, and plane. I'll get some different planes that I want. That's all really I need. The other ones I'll build. Back button. So I'll kind of copy all those and go into my images and paste. There we go. So got some assets in there. And now that I have those assets, I can say something like this. These are all my image assets. And I've added a bunch of files in here. So you can see that these are all the files added in. So I'll say added assets for the mail pilot game. Mail pilot game. Bam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish, right, to my new branch. So it's different than a push. If I was just pushing, it'd be cool, but my new branch doesn't exist. Now it will. So publish. I will. So it goes to 0.1. And when I go up there, when it's done, if I was to refresh, not only do I have the master branch, but I also have 0.1. And I can go to this, but the 0.1 branch is the one I'm going to be working on to add more assets and everything else. Okay. Next week when we get together, I think that's it for today. I've almost gone an hour over, like always. Next week, what we're going to do is get together. I'm going to continue working on the mail pilot. We're ready to go with the whole state machine thing, which is a relief to me, right? So you've seen the whole piece, and now you're able to start your mail pilot. There's some examples online of how this looks, but what I'm going to be doing is regarding assignment 2. Okay. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working with the mail pilot build already ready to go, as opposed to me starting from scratch, right? So let's see how you do. And I'm not going to do that. That boilerplate, we may modify it. We might go to 0.2, add some issues or whatever, and the next game we build, we can add to it as an example, or as an example, we can continue to work on our mail pilot. Probably I won't have time to go back because there's no time for this one. Did all that work, but there's no time for us to go back and track issues and all that stuff. Any questions for the guys that are here? There's a couple of diehards, right? You got Tim, Aaron, and Omid. Any questions, guys? Or any comments? I can keep giving you more stuff, but huh? You have to rewatch it. Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you next week. And next week we'll get into that mail pilot build. Okay, I was hoping to get it done this week or last week actually, but knowing how things are going, it's okay. I don't mind slowing down a little bit as long as we get everything ready to go.